Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to your University of Wisconsin, conveniently located in the heart of Marathon County and next to the beautiful White Pines and Marathon Park, which contributed to feeding the lumber industry that built this remarkable community. I'm delighted that UW-Marathon County is hosting this evening's assembly debate for important government seats in this great state of Wisconsin. My name is Sandy Smith, and I serve as the Dean for UW-Marathon County. One of the important roles of the university within the larger community is to provide a platform for sharing new ideas and to engage in civil debate on important and timely social and political issues. Tonight's event serves that important tenet of the university's mission. I wish all the candidates a heartfelt good luck as they enter into this evening's debate. Scott Suter and Tim Swigum from District 69, Jess Kafal and Donna Seidel, District 85, Nate Mishka and Jerry Petrowski, District 86. Welcome. We look forward to your comments at this evening's debate. I want to take a moment and acknowledge our sponsors: WAOW Television, Channel 9 News, Wausau Daily Herald, Wisconsin Public Radio, and the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service. And I'd like to give a special thanks to Eric Giordano, I see him in the back there, Jim Veninga, and Jean Greenwood for your work in coordinating this evening's event. It is now my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Glenn Moberg. Glenn serves as the morning anchor and reporter for WPR in central and northern Wisconsin. Glenn has been with Wisconsin Public Radio for 5 years and is an award-winning journalist whose work has been recognized by the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association. Most recently, Glenn received the Award of Excellence for Best News Writing from the WBA. In addition to covering for the statewide network, Glenn produces and hosts the Regional Ideas Network program, Route 51. He is a veteran moderator of numerous political debates in central Wisconsin. Please join me in welcoming Glenn.
Thank you, Sandy, and we'd like to welcome all of you to the UW-Marathon County Theater and this Election Year Issues Forum for the Assembly candidates of central Wisconsin. Tonight we'll be hearing from incumbent Republican Scott Suter and his Democratic challenger Tim Swigum in the Abbotsford-based 69th Assembly District, from Democrat Donna Seidel and her Republican challenger Jess Kafal in the Wausau-based 85th Assembly District, and from Republican Jerry Petrowski and his Democratic challenger Nate Mishka in the Mosinee-based 86th Assembly District. This event is sponsored by the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, the Wausau Daily Herald, WAOW TV9, and Wisconsin Public Radio. And our questioners tonight are Katie Rosenberg of WAOW and Robert Mentzer of the Daily Herald. Now, this is an issues-oriented forum with the candidates being paired by their assembly districts. All 3 pairs of candidates are going to be asked to respond to the same issue-oriented questions. Candidates will have 90 seconds to answer each question, and their answers will be followed by a free exchange or rebuttal session between the 2 candidates, and I'm going to adjust the timing on that. I think we're going to give you 3 minutes for the rebuttals instead of 5 to keep things moving along and see if we can get to additional questions. Now, when the first pair of candidates has gone through the process, we'll move on to the second pair of candidates who will be asked the same question, and then on to the third pair of candidates. Incumbents will go first, challengers go second. There will be no opening or closing remarks in tonight's forum. In Assembly District 69, incumbent Republican Scott Suter was first elected to his seat in 1998. He's chairman of the Judiciary and Ethics Committee. He's also a member of the Wisconsin Air National Guard and an Iraq War veteran. During his time in office, he has advocated cutting taxes and wasteful government spending. His opponent, Democrat Tim Swigum, is serving his 4th term as mayor of Owen and lists affordable health care, support for local schools, and ethics as his top priorities. In Assembly District 85, incumbent Democrat Donna Seidel was first elected in 2004. Before that, she served as Marathon County Clerk of Courts, also as an investigator with the Marathon County District Attorney's Office, and as a Wausau police officer. She has been involved in the recent legislative push for expanded health care coverage in Wisconsin. Her Republican opponent, Jessica Fall, is the owner of Wausau Roofing and Siding and Quality Built Garages. He lists reducing spending and the size of government as among his top priorities. Moving to Assembly District 86, incumbent Republican Jerry Petrusky was first elected in 1998. He serves as a chairman of the Transportation Committee. He's a ginseng, dairy, and beef farmer who wants to cut taxes and reduce the size of government. He also fought the Doyle administration's recent transfer of funds from the Transportation Department. And his Democratic opponent, Nate Mishka, is a former staffer for U.S. Congressman Dave Obey. He lists his priorities as reducing the economic strain on families and controlling the costs of health care and college tuition. We do want to thank the staff at UW Marathon County for the use of the theater tonight and for the technical support that makes this forum possible. A note to those in the audience, this forum is being streamed live right now on WausauDailyHerald.com. It is also being broadcast live on Wisconsin Public Access Channel 10. You'll be able to see highlights tonight on Newsline 9 at 10. And although we're not broadcasting it live, we will have highlights on the Route 51 radio program this Thursday at 5. That's on the Ideas Network stations, 91.9 FM Wausau, 930 AM Auburndale Stevens Point, 90.3 FM Park Falls, and if you've got a high-definition radio, 90.9 FM high-definition Channel 2. So please, a round of applause for all 6 of our candidates. And we turn to Katie Rosenberg of WAOW TV 9 for the first question. Katie?
Hi there. The national economy is hitting rough patch after rough patch. While the experts say that our area is somewhat insulated from the big bank failures and the volatility on Wall Street, folks still feel jittery because of recent local economics hits. Specifically, manufacturers are closing their Wisconsin factories, companies are making sweeping cuts, and others are just not hiring. What can you do to attract companies who will provide good-paying jobs in our area, and what can you do to help those that are already here? Is there anything statewide that we can do to shore up the economy, and how important are our tax cuts relative to new programs?
And we go first to Scott Suter, who has 90 seconds. Scott?
Thanks, Katie. I appreciate the question. Well, I think you have to look back at what we have done on a bipartisan basis for Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a little better poised than other states. We certainly have our struggles. But the last thing we should do is raise taxes in this state like some people in this panel want to do. Whether it's your healthcare taxes or your payroll taxes or business taxes, that seems to be some individual solutions. That is the wrong way to go in a poor economy. What we should do is encourage development, set our priorities straight, make sure we have good roads, make sure we have good health care, and encourage job and economic development and job investment, whether that's retraining or whether that's incentives for economic incentives for biofuels, making certain we reduce our dependence on foreign oil through ethanol and nuclear and all types, not just one or two, but all types of alternative energies. I've done that. I've got a record of doing that. I've got a record of keeping our roads on track, a record of creating jobs, whether it's the dental clinic in Neillsville that's going to create jobs or encouraging development throughout our area in rural Wisconsin. I think that's important, and I think you have to look at the record, but the last thing we do, again, is to raise taxes in this state on working families. That would punish people and reduce investment and chase jobs out of state. We can't let that happen.
We move to Tim Swigum. You've got 90 seconds.
Well, I too have been active in helping develop businesses in Owen, Wisconsin. In the 7 years since I've been mayor, we've increased our tax base by over 50%. And it wasn't through any big tax breaks that we had to give out. It was through cooperating with businesses and helping them get through the permitting process to help them start their businesses. One of the reasons I'm running is because we don't get enough support from our state representatives. And I feel that we need to be in partnership with our local communities to help them grow. I've been active on our local economic development corporations as well as in the Clark County Economic Development Corporation. So I've worked with other communities, I believe, to bring more jobs and economic development to their communities. I think it's a partnership with the state through the DNR, through Department of Commerce. I believe that we need to all work together. We can't be just showing up for the photo op when they break ground or do a ribbon cutting. I think we need to be there at the beginning and be the point person to help them develop their businesses. And I also believe that the less hectic the permit process is, the better it is for the businesses.
Let's move to the rebuttal session. Scott, Tim, you have an additional 3 minutes.
Who's first?
Go ahead.
Well, let me just rebut by saying my opponent says that there's not been enough support from me. Well, let me list some of the things we've done, and you can make your own decisions on whether or not there's enough support. With healthcare options, we passed Badger Care Plus in a bipartisan fashion. We passed cooperative care and fully funded it for the second time in a row. We saved and fully funded senior care on a bipartisan basis. I helped secure $3 million for a dental clinic in Neillsville, Wisconsin, that's going to not only create dental access for working families, but also create jobs. We passed the toughest sex predator law in the entire nation that's going to protect children. And working with Senator Kreitlow and Senator Decker, we worked to make sure that our economic technology zones and our ag zone was secure when even some of my own Republicans wanted to kill the program. So I'm not sure where, Tim, you're coming from in terms of I haven't worked hard enough or we haven't delivered. We also kept Highway 13 on track when the DOT from Rapids wanted to delay it for 2 years. We fought them through the budget process, made sure it's on track. That's why it's being constructed now. So not sure what you're talking about when you're saying that I haven't brought jobs to the area or haven't been there, because we've really worked our tails off to make sure that we not only, as you say, brought the bacon home, but made sure central and north central Wisconsin
I guess
were priorities.
I would like to get my time in here too. Scott says he's brought $3 million to the city of Neillsville. Well, this money was meant to spread out across the state, as far as I understand. He is telling the community of Neillsville that this money is meant to build a dental clinic, which the dental clinic is a great idea, but to say that he's bringing that money there is a little bit of a stretch of the imagination. I believe that Healthy Wisconsin would make Wisconsin a business magnet that would help businesses deal with the high cost of health care and health insurance, and this savings would bring businesses to Wisconsin and our area, and I believe that we still need more representation from our representatives to be aware of what our local economic development corporations are doing. Frankly, we don't see them there, and I'm afraid that if we have a disagreement on that, that's the way it is. But we need someone that's going to show up more than just for the ribbon cutting or the groundbreaking.
We've got 30 seconds.
Well, that's interesting because you just showed up to a ribbon cutting in Loyal that you had nothing to do with. So
I'm president of Clark County Economic Development
actually,
Corporation.
you're vice president, but we won't get into that. Let me just say this. I brought $3 million. $3 million, I inserted it along with Senator Decker in the last state budget that is building a dental clinic that's going to serve a 40-square-mile radius for our entire area, Tim. You should be on board with that. We're helping working families get dental access, which is the #1 phone call in our
10
office.
seconds.
Somehow
I
you
think that
that's
the
a
truth
problem.
will come out in the wash that this money is meant for the whole state, and that we need to concentrate on our area and not just on.
Bring it on.
Same question to Donna Seidel and Jessica Fall. What can we do, given the nasty economic climate, to attract and keep good-paying jobs? How important are tax cuts relative to new programs? And we'll start with Donna Seidel.
Well, I'd like to focus on the two areas that I believe affect our business economy most significantly and will be at the base of helping Wisconsin grow and have a thriving economy. Let's talk about taxes. I think that the issue in Wisconsin is fair taxes, and that what has been a real strong advocacy of the Democrats in the recent legislative sessions has been to increase transparency so that we actually can find out who the corporations are, and they're primarily multi-state larger corporations that are shirking their duties and are paying little, if any, property taxes. They are paying little, if any, income taxes, while many of our Main Street small and mid-sized businesses are paying more than their fair share. I like to talk about a quote that came out of a business symposium in Milwaukee about 2 years ago. The president, the CEO of the largest private employer, was speaking about the tax climate, the general business climate in Wisconsin. He'd been in the state for 150 years and said if he was asked now to settle in Wisconsin, he probably would not. He didn't have any plans to leave, but he probably wouldn't settle here. And he said, but guess what? It isn't because of the tax climate. The tax climate for us isn't bad. What we have a problem with is a skilled workforce.
Donna, your 90 seconds is up. Let's move to Jess Kafal. Jess, you've got 90 seconds.
Okay, that's a pretty tall question you have there. Being that I'm directly involved in small business for the last 25 years, I guess I can tell you firsthand some of the problems that we've incurred over time. Payroll taxes are a big thing. A lot of times, most times, small business never makes it past the first turn because they stumble and they get tangled up in state-imposed taxes and penalties and late interest fees and such. I believe that new business should have tax breaks at least for a probationary period until they can get themselves established. As for growing our economy, I believe that to invest in anything that is green. I mean, that's the way of the future. Whether it be wind, solar, nuclear power, alternative fuels, that's where the money's at. I think we should keep our eye on the ball. We should also spend more time in training new business entrepreneurs. Many very talented and skilled people fail because they lack the basic business skills to maintain a business environment, and possibly even establish a mentor system. You know, like I know we have the SCORE system, but most people don't know about that. But I think that might be a real advantage if some of these new people just had a little assistance for the first year or two. Tax incentives for health savings accounts. I guess I've always been a real proponent of that. I believe that people should take a personal stake in their own personal health care and not insist that Uncle Sam takes care of all of their needs.
All right, the two of you now have 3 minutes for a rebuttal, Donna, or question and answers between the two of you.
Okay. To further my comments on worker training and building a skilled workforce, which I believe is the key piece of growing Wisconsin's economy. I think a great example of that is a recent opportunity some of us had to celebrate an expansion of business here in central Wisconsin. Shooty Metals added 76,000 square feet. Their business has they saw a 20% increase in their business over the last year, and they credited two things for it. They credited the fact that they were partnering with institutions like UWMC and NTC to grow and retrain and train the highly skilled workers they need, and they were very appreciative of it. They were also very appreciative of training grants that they got from the state, and Governor Doyle and the administration of Wisconsin is very anxious and willing and eager to help grow small businesses and entrepreneurships. In terms of tax breaks and tax credits, there's been an awful lot of work done over the past several years to increase those for businesses. The Committee on Tax Exemptions, has estimated $3 billion a year on tax credits, breaks, and various loopholes. I think it's incumbent on us to review those credits and breaks to make sure that the ones we extend really do benefit businesses, grow small and medium and large businesses, and the ones that don't, because I, like my colleague, am very opposed to wasteful government spending, we ought to eliminate those.
We're down to 45 seconds for this segment, Jess.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I don't particularly care to argue about minor little things, and oddly enough, we have the same opinion on a lot of topics. So I don't know why we're running for the same office. Maybe we should just have a job share program. Anyway, I guess I have no rebuttal. I mean, I agree that we agree on a lot of the same things, and you know, there's some small items, but I would sooner get along with the other side of the table than to fight it out like dogs on a porch.
All right, let's move to Jerry Petrusky and Nate Mishka. How do we keep jobs in the area given the current economic climate, and how important are tax cuts relative to new programs? Jerry, you go first.
I think jobs are the main the mainstay of anything we're going to do with the economy. It's the answer to a lot of the problems that we face. Wisconsin has some very unique thing that we've done over the last couple of years, the Jobs Creation Act, the Dairy Manufacturing Facility Investment Credit, the idea of trying to get businesses to expand here, to grow here. There are so many things that we partner with local government, and I think it's a combined effort between state government and local government for a whole variety of things that we focus on. Everything from tax and increment financing districts, where you can go ahead and take dollars from taxes and build that district to lure businesses there. Development zones. We have block grants through the Department of Commerce that go ahead and put money out to correspond to expanding to the number of workers hired. We have T grants from DOT that can be used for rail spurs, that can be used for a whole variety of things, roadways going into businesses to expand, to create jobs. We have transportation enhancement grants that can be used for a variety of things. There are training grants.
15 seconds, Jerry.
Some municipal type grants that they can use for utilities. Certainly, we're very fortunate in Wisconsin. We have a great education system. We have workers that really want to work. And I think between the combination of everything, that's why Central Wisconsin has fared very well in that jobs market.
Nate Mishka, you've got 90 seconds.
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple of things we can be doing, and I know that Representative Petruski named a lot of programs just now. I know that he probably had something to do with some of them, but I think a lot of them were in place as well, that the corporations and businesses have a chance to get involved in. Three things I think I'd focus on that I think set me apart a little bit. Number one, I would vote for the American Jobs Act, which is a bill that simply says that when the state is giving out contracts to businesses here with our taxpayer money, that we ought to give preference to hardworking Americans and companies employing them rather than those shipping jobs overseas. That's something, like I said, that I would vote differently than Representative Petruski has. The second thing I think is a more long-term problem and more difficult to explain, but it's getting the state budget deficit under control. And as part of that, I think there's certainly a number of loopholes that out-of-state corporations are not paying that increase the burden on small businesses here in Wisconsin and property taxes. We certainly need to look at the tax code to make sure that people are paying their fair share so that all the rest of us don't get hammered with the rest of the bill.
10 seconds.
Sure, that's about it.
All right, let's go to the 3-minute rebuttal session.
Thank you. Nate is referring to a bill that I did not vote against. The vote that was taken was against process. We have a process in Washington or in Madison, just like they do in Washington, where bills are referred to committee and they go through the committee process. This bill didn't go through the committee process. This was a pulling motion on the floor. And that's why it was voted down. In fact, there were some dialogue on that bill. And I'd like to read this to you. There is no way of determining the cost of the bill or the number of American jobs that it would save. It would not give state contracts to the lowest bidder, costing taxpayers more money. It would greatly increase government red tape to enforce the law. It would increase the time and cost of the procedural process. And the bill would put Wisconsin in violation of the Wisconsin Trade Organization Government Procurement Agreement. Now, these aren't my words. They're Governor Doyle's administration's words.
Sure. Well, I'll just respond by saying that I don't necessarily agree with Governor Doyle on all things, and this perhaps is one of them. I don't intend to have a 100% party line voting record like Representative Petruski has had. On 314 out of 314 votes in the last 2-year session, he voted with his Republican Party leader, the Speaker. And so I would just say that this is still something that I'd like to push and make certain and see if we can find a way to do it. And I think that we also do need to address the deficit as well.
We've got 90 seconds.
Under the process, if we took out the procedural type motions, there's probably some Democrats that have voted with me also. I think the idea of trying to portray this as something different than what it is, though, I think is completely different. When I ran for office the first time, there was some political people that wanted me to trash the opponent I was running against. But I wouldn't do it because what they were saying wasn't legitimate. However, my opponent, he thinks that this is legitimate when it's not truly a vote on the bill, and I think that either makes him naive or somebody that doesn't care about portraying things in complete truth.
20 seconds.
Well, just real quickly, there was also a similar vote on this, on an amendment in 2005, very similar bill, and he voted the same way on it. I do feel it's important. I think it's something that can refocus things toward American jobs as opposed to those companies shipping jobs overseas, and I'll stand by that.
Let's move to the next question. Robert Menser of the Wausau Daily Herald on the subject of health care.
The debate about Healthy Wisconsin in last year's legislative session made clear the battle lines when it comes to expanding health coverage in the state. Those pushing for Healthy Wisconsin said it would provide universal coverage for Wisconsin's residents, and those who opposed it said the program would amount to an enormous tax increase, often advocating private health savings accounts as an alternative. My question to those on either side of the issue is, how has your thinking about healthcare reform changed as a result of this financial crisis? By showing how volatile the market is, the crisis points out a serious drawback of health savings accounts. Are citizens comfortable having their healthcare savings exposed to market risks? For proponents of universal healthcare, is it responsible for the state to take on an expensive new program at a time of financial hardship?
And we're shifting the lineup a little bit. We go first to the 86th district or 85th district and Donna Seidel. Donna, you've got 90 seconds.
Well, as you mentioned before, Glenn, I have been a very strong advocate in healthcare reform in Wisconsin and making quality health care affordable to everybody in the state. There's so many pieces to this issue. Let's talk Healthy Wisconsin. Healthy Wisconsin was a Senate plan, a Senate initiative. The Assembly Democrats did not have an opportunity to bring a plan of our own to the floor. We will be putting together a plan that the Assembly will back, and it may very much look like Healthy Wisconsin. It will certainly take the best points of Wisconsin. It may tweak some of those points. And there's some very, very good pieces of what Healthy Wisconsin is. It is obviously primarily employer-based, like most of healthcare insurance that people have had since World War II. It's affordable. Companies that supply it now and provide health care benefits now would see a savings. Small businesses that would have struggles getting to that would probably need assistance and subsidies getting up to speed with that. But nevertheless, the point is that wherever we go, all of us at this front table, whenever we have talked to constituents and voters, whether they're individuals, business owners, farmers, we hear over and over again that this is one of their single top priorities of trying to figure out how to take care of themselves, take care of their families, and afford health care.
Jessica Fall, you've got 90 seconds.
It's always been my personal preference. I hate to keep going back to the health savings account, but I believe that people should take a personal responsibility in their own health care and their health prevention. And we should be able to do this locally, that people should have choices of doctors they want to see and not have it administered by some state employee. I guess the joke is it's like having someone from the DOT handle your health needs. If this program was into place, and if Wisconsin was to do it as a whole and not a regional type of program, there'd be a mass exodus of employers just packing up their bags and leaving for another state, as well as a huge influx of people from adjoining states flocking into Wisconsin to take advantage of this program. That's all I have on that issue. Thanks.
All right, the two of you now have 3 minutes.
Well, first of all, the plans, Healthy Wisconsin and other plans that have had significant work put into them over a number of years, have a couple of important pieces that my opponent is not very clear on. One, they're public partnerships. These are not state-run. Secondly, they do provide choice provider. Thirdly, they do important things by encourage personal responsibility and provide for no-cost or very low-cost preventive services. And also, there is different regulations that would be involved with the healthcare industry, and things like pre-existing conditions would no longer create automatic exemptions for people who need the coverage. So those are in plans. I think it's important that we talk about health savings accounts, because in some of these plans, health savings accounts can be a factor. They are not the be-all and end-all. They are not the silver bullet. Most people understand that for maybe the healthy and the wealthy, they work. They're high deductible plans. The minimum deductible is $2,200 for a family, $1,200 for an individual, but the average deductible for family is $3,800. And then there are premiums to pay as well. Well, the people that I talk to and are telling me that every day they are struggling to put gas in their car and food on their table would have an awfully tough time coming up with an extra $3,800 to put aside to comply with the high deductible. So people that look at it realize that the jury is still out on even the other aspects of health savings accounts beyond affordability. When they are high deductible, the question is, will people be more reluctant to go for early treatment, or would they wait until a disease gets more severe and costly before they would want to go and start spending out their high deductible?
We've got 45 seconds.
Okay, thanks. I agree on some of the issues. There is no silver bullet program that's going to solve all these problems, and the pre-existing conditions is one item that definitely needs to be dealt with. For what I hear is most employers are willing to forego this initial, we'll call it deductible, based on the amount of savings they have by the virtual half cost what it is for this health savings plan compared to hooking on to an insurance company's program. The biggest concern I have is they project a 12% payroll tax, and everybody knows that you project 12%. It's like the old saying, how to remodel your kitchen at just over 2.5 times its estimated cost. Ultimately, when the plan's in play, that 12% could be 25 or 30%.
We're going to move on to Jerry Petrusky and Nate Mishka in the 86th District. And Jerry, again on healthcare, you go first, 90 seconds.
I think everyone has a right to affordable health care, regardless where you are. The Healthy Wisconsin Plan, I do believe, has some problems. One, if you look across the world at places that have some type of universal health care, you run into tremendous problems with things like waiting list, rationing. Up in Canada, I read a book on this, and I talked to one of the doctors that was up there. And they said there was a young lady that had a mastectomy. She had breast cancer. She had a 4-month waiting list to get in for chemo. Now, can you imagine if your wife or your daughter or your mother went through that and had to wait 4 months? Think about the fact that if you're 65 years old and you need heart surgery, you get put on a waiting list. There's a reason why people are coming to this country for health care, because we have the best and you can get to it. Is it cheap? No, it's not. Is there things that we can do? I believe there are. I think we can look at a number of factors that will help lower the cost. Pool buying of drugs. I think that's a big one. Redistributing. Having a narrow range of plans where the administration costs would be substantially lower. Oversight over rates going up. The goal, I think, has to be to put the healthcare choices in the hands of the patient. If they're dealing with their own money, they will find a way to spend less and be a better purchaser of healthcare.
Nate Mishka, you've got 90 seconds.
Wellness is also a big factor.
Sure. Well, and this is an issue that I've had a great deal of personal experience with. Growing up, I was diagnosed as a type 1 juvenile diabetic at age 6. And so, that experience has always kind of emphasized for me the need for affordable health care that's always there for people, because especially in an uncertain economic time like we're dealing with, the job that provides the health care that you have may not be there. And I think that, you know, people who work hard and play by the rules and pay taxes do deserve to have affordable health care. In terms of the Healthy Wisconsin plan, I think that there's probably a number of options we can look at in the next legislative session. And I guess I would just simply say that this would certainly be one of my top priorities in looking at all the ideas that we have out there. One of the things I guess I would just follow up with about the Healthy Wisconsin plan that disappointed me last year when it was offered was that there was really no counter proposal from the state assembly. I don't know if that was because the state senate was controlled by the Democratic Party and the assembly is controlled by the Republican Party, but it seems to me that it's very difficult to negotiate or compromise on a plan when one group of people offers a plan and another group doesn't offer anything at all. You can't negotiate with yourself.
Let's go into the rebuttal session, and all of you have been very polite with one another, but this is a session where you can question one another and actively rebut what the other person is saying. We'd like you to continue to be polite, but there is an opportunity for more one-on-one interaction if you would like that. So Jerry and Nate, you've got 3 minutes.
Well, I think the $15.2 billion cost, everybody should be concerned about that, and that cost is only going to go up. Some of the problems you run into is 2/3 of our jobs that are created in this state are probably created in small business. Some small businesses don't have an extra 12% to put towards health care. And so if it comes down to that being the deciding factor, they're probably going to go someplace else and create their jobs. And I think it's up to us to try to make sure that they stay here. Are there things that we can do, things that we can agree on? I absolutely believe that we can. I think that there's a plan that I need, that I think you should start with, and it's the Ziegelbauer plan. And I've talked about this before. It's in Manitowoc County. It doesn't affect everybody, but it does affect people that are in the healthcare system already. In this particular case, it was the county of Manitowoc. Between everything that was done, putting in the HSAs, getting vendors or people that deliver health care to agree to certain terms, they were able to cut the cost dramatically. The county of Manitowoc saved $6,000 for every employee, and the employee themselves saved $2,400 each. Now, this is money that ends up going into their HSA. If they use it, it's gone. If they don't use it, it rolls over and it remains in their retirement account. But between the two of them, that's an $8,400 savings per individual that's working for the county of Manitowoc. And I think that's a start in the right direction. Now we can take that and try to find different aspects of that to make it better.
Well, I've said to various groups over the course of this campaign that I'm willing to listen to ideas from anyone on healthcare, whether it be small businesses, large businesses, unions, people with chronic diseases like diabetes or other ones. But I think the bottom line is it's very hard to discuss this issue and come up with some kind of a compromise when you've voted 100% of the time with your party leadership on 314 out of 314 votes. I think it's just a very difficult thing to do when you go into Madison with that mindset.
Jerry, this is the second time he's brought that up.
Yeah, so you're saying that if you were on the other side of the aisle and you were there, that you wouldn't vote with your party on issues that you felt you would bring forward and wanted to get passed?
I'm saying that I don't think I'd quite hit the 100% mark.
Well, I probably didn't hit the 100% mark every time that we voted either, but I think it's rather naive to try to use that as an issue.
Well, I think it is. There's a big difference between 80 or 90% and 100%. I think is the simple fact. You know, it doesn't show the amount of independence I think you need in order to work with others. I think that's what it says, and
I think the reality is I have always been willing to work with anybody, whether it's our Senator Decker or whether it's Representative Seidel or anyone from the other side of the aisle, because we're there to solve problems, and if it's good for a different part of the state, even if it's not close to central Wisconsin, it's still good for the state. And I have done bills helping other people get their bills through from the other side of the aisle, and that's what I think is important.
I'm going to add one more thing real quickly. I agree it's good to work bipartisanly, and I know that Representative Petresky has worked. I know he mentioned a bill a couple weeks ago about fire code suppression systems, you know, as sort of a big bipartisan achievement that he worked with Senator Decker on. And I guess what I said at that time was that that bill, the big bipartisan achievement, was one that made sure that cheese curd operators could keep, you know, going through the fair rather than being shut down after a couple days. And I'm an Everest area optimist. I agree that selling cheese curds is important, but I also said at that time during the chamber debate that I think that there are other issues that are much bigger, like the state budget deficit and the economy, that we need to be working together.
Jerry, we're over here, but I'm going to give you another 30 seconds.
Yeah, let me tell you that there's more than just this fire suppression bill. I also worked on the utility aids payments. I also worked on the bill to allow 3M to run with trucks a little heavier down the road, including local control. Those were all important issues. Maybe Nate frames it as a cheese curd bill, and he doesn't think it's important. But we probably had 10 vendors that would not be at the fair anymore, and all the money that they make goes to great causes around this area. Women's health, they go ahead to the boys, girls clubs, things like that, some of the churches. All that money goes to community efforts here to make our community better. We were going to lose all that, and that's why Senator Decker and I did that bill.
Let's move on to Scott Suter and Tim Swigum in District 69. Back to healthcare, gentlemen. Healthy Wisconsin, your reaction to it, your alternative if you have one.
Well, it was stated the battle lines are drawn. Yes, the battle lines are drawn, sometimes on cheese curds. And to say that to go after cheese curds in the #1 dairy-producing section of the state, wow, look out. The battle lines are drawn in Healthy Wisconsin. Look, let's be frank about this. The plan, which my opponent endorsed, and some people are still hanging on to, it's $15 billion per year, and that's a payroll tax, and that's only the first year. Again, $15 billion of your tax money going to the government to run your health care. It also covers illegal aliens. Now, I hope that's fixed in some future plans, but it covers illegal aliens. I don't want to do that. I don't know why on earth anyone would support such a thing. It's an employer and employee payroll tax. Everyone is going to pay. If you're a dual income family and you have one health insurance right now, guess what? You're going to be paying 2 to the government. Puts the government in charge of your health care. You don't think that's the case? It's a 17-member board that's unelected and has the power to, guess what? Tax. They have the power to tax. And anytime you give a board the power to tax, guess what they're going to do? They're going to up the tax. I bet my bottom dollar. Small businesses would be devastated. And the nation, whether it's Wall Street Journal or others, are laughing at us if we pass this plan. Well, and you talk about the
10 seconds.
Health savings accounts. It's not our only plan. Yes, it's a component. I agree with it. Even the feds got it right. Even the feds have this. So it's not the only plan, but absolutely I support health savings accounts. It's good for families.
Tim Swigum, you have 90 seconds.
I guess the issue of the costs involved and the fight to reduce our taxes, it's important. But has anyone seen their property taxes go down in the last decade? No, but they keep promising that. Although the Healthy Wisconsin plan is still a work in progress, it's the closest thing that we've had come across the board to a plan. I think it will help us reduce property taxes because counties, cities, schools will save a lot of money as far as what they pay right now in health insurance costs. Mr. Suter continues to ignore the calls from his constituency to do something about the soaring costs of health care and instead votes with the special interests that contribute to his campaign. He's voted against autistic children and voted in favor of the insurance companies instead of having them cover the costs of that. The public is getting tired of this. This type of support for the powerful lobbyists over the needs of the constituents is typical for Scott Suter, even though he comes home every 2 years to convince the public that things are otherwise. The farmers are going to benefit grossly from this. The farmers are paying right now, most that I talk to are paying $500 a month with a $20,000 deductible. So they don't go to the doctor. They're not going to go to the doctor because they have to pay the first $20,000 out of their pocket. And it's outrageous. And it's correct that the farmers, this is their #1 issue. They're not getting health care because it's all out of their pocket.
Gentlemen, you both have 3 minutes.
Well, you know, coming home every 2 years. I live in Abbotsford. I pay property taxes. And thank you, Tim, for leading the fight to raise the sales tax in Clark County. That's going to help a lot.
Didn't lead the fight.
Well, you took credit for it in the
Did
blog.
not take
I've
credit
got
anyway.
I've got it right here, Tim. So.
Yep, lie again, Scott.
Oh, really? Well, anybody can have a copy of it after we're here. This is lively. I like it. This is good. It's on. Look, I understand we have a disagreement on Healthy Wisconsin, but the fact is, covers illegal aliens, covers abortions. It's a $15 billion payroll tax. It's the last thing the state needs is the government in charge of your health care. The government's going to not only run your health care, they're going to tell you what prescriptions you get, where you go, what doctor you choose, and
None of
when
that
you
is
get
included
access.
in the plan. I don't know where
Well-
Scott Suter reads that, and the illegal aliens. I don't recall reading that in there either.
I've got a legislative council memorandum that says it covers illegal aliens. And I've got 50 questions that I asked Tim a long time ago. Please answer
Scott, you
these
don't even
questions.
speak to me. What do you mean you asked me? He won't even look at me in public.
50 questions, Tim. Here you go.
You didn't ask me that because I'm not in the legislature.
50 questions that I
But
asked you at
Scott
the previous
did vote
forum.
98% of the time with Mike Hipsch, and I do believe that is important because
You
I
know-
don't think that 98% of the time the Republicans or the Democrats are correct.
You know,
I
it's
would not
interesting.
vote with our party.
It's
I would
interesting
vote for
that
the people.
You know, voting is not about percentages. It's about getting things done. Now,
How
if
much
you want
did
to
we
talk
get done the last legislative
Well, let's
session?
talk about what I've got done. It's nice you have your supporters here. That's great, but
I don't even know these people, Scott.
Well, the people.
They're not in our district.
The
Thank goodness
people.
for you.
Wow. You know, let's talk about getting things done. $3 million that is helping build a dental clinic in Neillsville. We voted for Badger Care Plus, saved senior care on a bipartisan basis, cooperative care, which is helping farmers, Tim. $3 million for domestic violence prevention. Now, they don't have a huge lobbying organization that accepted money from, but we got it done. We saved Highway 13, and we made sure that rural doctors are going to be encouraged to come to our state. And we're going to have more money for HRSA, which is the high-risk health insurance plan, which we solved on a bipartisan basis. So you can talk about percentages. I'm going to talk about getting things done for our constituents. And if you want to talk about the dental clinic, I'm here to talk about it all night long because I'm very proud of it.
The only thing with the dental clinic is the $3 million he claims to be bringing to Neillsville is meant for the whole state.
The $3 million is money that Senator Decker and I placed in the state budget that is helping to build the dental clinic. It's actually capturing $3 million from the feds. So there's
15
$6 million
seconds.
going statewide to build a dental clinic in Neillsville. And yes, it's going to other centers as well. I'm proud of that. But we're building a dental clinic because of that $3 million.
It's all coming to Neillsville is a little bit of a stretch of the truth.
I said the $3 million is helping to build a dental clinic. That's the issue, Tim. You don't like the dental clinic?
Stretch
Say
it some more, Scott.
All right, we're going to wrap up that portion of the forum. I see we are having some interaction now between the candidates.
I'm sure we can't all weigh in on this again.
Anybody who wants to weigh in on this very briefly, just go forward, but we've got to move along.
Okay, ladies first.
Well, I'd like to support what Nate Mishka was saying, and that was the fact that the Senate did have a comprehensive health care reform package, and we didn't have a chance to vote on it. And we may have wanted to tweak it a bit, and we may have had other ideas. But the Democrats in the majority in the Assembly knew in no uncertain terms that package was simply not going to be advanced. If and when health care was brought up by the Assembly Republicans, we heard two things over and over and over. Healthcare savings accounts, which now Representative Suter says was not a be-all and end-all. You wouldn't have known that in the last session. And we heard transparency. Transparency is great. We all need to understand a little more what healthcare costs and what quality is associated with it. But we also know that more and more people are going without health care. We know that small businesses are begging and pleading for help because most small businesses in the state really do want to take care of their employees, but they simply can't because the costs are escalating. And the ones that do say, hey, you know what? We're at an economic disadvantage because our competitor across the street isn't providing it. We've
10
got to
seconds,
do
Donna.
something.
Anyone else, Jerry?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, the $510. If there's 3 people in the family, that'll be $1,530 per month. That's huge. When we first got into the discussion on the Healthy Wisconsin, it seems to me I remember Governor Doyle saying that he lives in the real world and Healthy Wisconsin isn't there. The other thing, I heard somebody complaining about property taxes. Well, I can tell you that a lot of property taxes don't have to do with the state. They're mostly all local and school taxes and tech schools and things like that. The state portion is usually the forestry, and that's less than 1%.
Tim, you want to respond to that?
We go out of our way to make sure that we come up with 2/3 or close to 2/3 so that it doesn't roll on the property tax.
The Healthy Wisconsin plan as it was a payroll tax, 10% of a person's wages the employer pays, 4% the employee pays. But the city of Owen spends over $9,000 a year per employee, $9,500 a year per employee, and that's no Cadillac plan at all. And we would save $45,000 under this plan. Someone making $40,000, their employer would pay $4,000, the employee would pay $1,600. It's not astronomical. It's fair and it's affordable and it's a plan that we can live with.
All right, Scott, now to you. I'm going to wrap this up pretty quickly.
Okay, government would do better under the plan, but small businesses would be driven out of the state, and every employer and employee would suddenly have a brand new payroll tax that would put the government in charge of their health care. One heck of a plan that covers illegal aliens, and I hope somebody answers these 50 questions. I hope someone answers these 50 questions, because they're serious questions. But this plan, it is a recipe for disaster for our economy.
All right, Jessica Caval.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Representative Suter on this one. 12% payroll tax, we all know that's never going to cut it. It's probably going to end up to be 2 or 3 times that amount. And we do have a working model in Manitowoc County, which Representative Petrowski speaks of. In the real world, companies, they test market products and services in certain areas, and if they work, they move on with them. If they don't, they axe them. Here we've got an opportunity with one county, and he told you the numbers that are actual, real, true numbers. Maybe as a state, we should start out with the state employees and let them work on this.
And Nate, you've
program.
got the final word. You've got 30 seconds here.
Sure. I won't add a whole lot, but I just think that my opponent's record on health care, I think there's a couple votes that show his devotion to the issue. He voted, like Tim said, with Scott's record, voted against the autistic children bill that makes sure insurance companies cover that. Hearing aids as well for kids that can't hear, and also for a constitutional amendment that prohibits doing anything comprehensive on health care. And when you have that kind of a voting record, it just seems like you're almost in the silly season. So I'll let it go at that.
All right, we're going to move on, but Jerry and Nate, you start off the next session. If you want to refer back to this during the rebuttal session, Jerry, you can do that. Let's move on to Katie. We're talking about taxes, financing for the public schools, and the state budget. Katie, you've got the next question.
All right. Our public schools are disproportionately financed by property taxes, and many of them are in dire straits because of escalating costs. Districts have been forced to cut back programs and even consider mergers or dissolution because voters typically do not want to see their property taxes increased. Should the state contribute more money to public school funding? And if it does, how will we balance the budget without money transfers and gimmicks? Be specific about how you would raise revenue or cut other programs if you think more money needs to go to our schools.
And again, we're moving over one pair of candidates, so we'll be starting this time with Jerry Petrowski from the 86th District.
Okay, on school funding, under the revenue caps, if the state doesn't come up with approximately 2/3, it gets shifted to the property taxpayer. That is problematic because you know what property taxes are in the state of Wisconsin. We make every effort to come up with dollars. This next budget that we're going into, there's going to be $1 billion more for that next budget, just through K through 12. That's astronomical. Are there problems out there? Absolutely. The property tax levy credit, where the more rich property gets more money back in the property tax levy credit, that maybe needs to be looked at. There are some situations with declining enrollment and increasing enrollment. I think we need to look to try to find an answer there. The schools that are really struggling with declining enrollment, because it's based on a 3-year rolling average, even though they're losing some students, they don't have enough loss of students to get rid of the teacher in that class. So they still keep the class, but they're struggling because they've been shorted that many dollars. I think there is something we can look at doing in the short term, and that would be Chapter 220. Chapter 220 in Milwaukee, I'm not sure how many tens of millions of dollars it is right now. I think 83 sounds right, but I'm not sure about that number. But that program should have been done away with back in the 80s. What that program does is it deals with school integration, where you move a student from one district or within a district even to another school. The recipient school are able to claim that student under the 2/3 funding formula, and then Chapter 220 picks up the busing plus makes a payment to that school where the child is supposed to be for not being there. Now that's crazy, but some of those schools are making money off of it, and it's very hard to get it changed.
Nate, you've got 90 seconds.
Sure. Well, as a product of a public school, I feel like our public schools are certainly one of the most key priorities that our state can have, and certainly the escalating costs have been a burden on everyone. I guess here I go back again, at least first, I do think that we need to look at the school funding formula in general and aggressively. I don't think that that's something that Representative Petrusky and the Assembly Republican leadership have done as much as they should. And in terms of it being tied back to property taxes too, I think in general, I'm fairly sure that we haven't achieved the 2/3 level, but I'll defer to some of the elected representatives here, and that means that property taxes are getting increased because of that failure by the state to provide 2/3. So I think, again, here I go back to some of these issues of loopholes that we need to work on closing, and then see where that leaves us, and then evaluate what options might make sense after that as well.
All right, the two of you now have 3 minutes, and Jerry, if you want to refer back to the previous question, you can do that.
Well, I think we should take care of this one first. I think the bottom line is Nate would raise property taxes, and I don't believe that we can do that. I think that's just asking too much of the people that are paying those taxes here in the state of Wisconsin. He talks about loopholes, and we have closed a lot of loopholes this past 3-4 years. The banking that was being done out of Las Vegas, we changed that dramatically. The Newark decision, which was put into place to encourage businesses to recycle, was a great idea, but after the court ruling, people were able to take that deduction not only on the equipment, but on the facility, the parking lot, the whole thing. So we changed that. We did something with the REITs, they call it, the Real Estate Investment Trust, where big box stores are shifting their income to another state. We've closed some of those loopholes and some of the sales tax things. Now I keep on hearing this sales tax loophole cleanup from different people. They look at the sales tax exemptions as a possibility for new revenue. Well, let me tell you, sales tax exemptions, there are 4 main ones where all the money is. One is food, prescription drugs, rent, and the farm exemption. Now, to some of the people at this table, those may be our corporate loopholes, but I'll tell you that if you had an $800 rent payment and had to pay another 5% on top of that, that would be $40 per month, or almost $400 at the end of the year more that you'd be paying in sales tax. I'm not going to stand still and see those exemptions change on food and prescription drugs and rent and even the farm exemption.
We've got about a minute.
Well, with all due respect, I'm not going to take a lot of baloney about raising taxes, something that I've never said, from someone who has stood by over the last decade and let the state budget deficit spiral out of control. If anyone in this audience doesn't think that that is going to raise taxes in the long term or do something or cut crucial priorities, then I think they're using Madison math.
Nate, you can't have it both ways. You always want to have it both ways. I don't know why that is. The budgets that we have passed, the assembly budgets in our House, were not the ones that put us in the hole. Those were cut down. They were very lean. But when you go ahead and have to compromise with the Democratic Senate, with the governor, there ends up being a compromise, and that costs more money. you go ahead and find fault with people. You say you don't work together, you don't work together. I'm one of the people that's working together with the other side of the aisle, trying to find a way, willing to vote for a compromise, and then you say, oh, you're spending this money. You can't have it both ways.
10 seconds.
So you're saying that the budget deficit that Governor Doyle inherited in 2003 when he took office is somehow his fault as well, and everyone else's, but the Assembly Republican leadership, yourself included?
The budget deficit really was generated because we went through 9/11. And that threw a wrench into so many things.
Please.
I don't know why you'd laugh at that. There was a lot of people, and our economy struggled after 9/11.
Let's move on to Scott Suter and Tim Swigum in the 69th District. Scott, you go first. We're talking about property taxes and school funding.
Well, let's start with school funding. Here's what the Assembly did and the final version of the budget reflected. We put $525 million in new money for schools. And we also made sure that rural schools in our area, which I was proud to have a hand in, we put more money for declining enrollment schools, which affect a lot of the schools in the 69th Assembly District, more money for rural transportation aids. Now, this is during a budget deficit, so I think that's a pretty good thing that happened. And we also made sure that we did the right thing for allowing schools to participate in energy initiatives so they can capture more money, be it through wind or any type of alternative energy. Now, that's a 2-year total, totaling $12 billion. That's new money that we're talking about, and I think that's important. I think there's a couple things we can do. I think we should allow, I think Jerry's right. We should get rid of that Chapter 220 program, which only benefits Milwaukee. It's around 84 million. We should get rid of it, redistribute that across the state. I think that would help immensely. We should also allow educators a choice in their health care plans. Right now, they've got, basically a lot of districts have one Cadillac plan, the WEAC plan. If we simply allowed them a choice, if the governor would sign that bill that we in the Assembly passed, we could save millions and still getting quality health care for educators and retired educators like my mom. So there's things we can do, but we've made the investment. We've made smart investments for our schools. And if you look at schools as a result of the last budget in the 69th Assembly District, most of them, in fact, a great percentage of them, are getting 2/3 funding. I think that's a success.
Tim Swigum, you've got 90 seconds.
Well, I've been the mayor of Owen for 7 years, and we've watched our ability to budget for the needs of our constituents erode under the increasing costs of healthcare and energy. Now, we've worked hard for economic development. You can't solve it with just economic development. We've grown by over 50%, and yet we still have problems keeping up with the spiraling costs of healthcare and energy. I have been 7 years in the budgeting process, and we've brought responsible spending to the city. I think we need to bring that to the state. As far as the property taxes and the school funding, I think we need to separate the costs of the classroom from the costs of the building. We need to throw out the funding formula and start all over again. But the cost of the classroom based on enrollment numbers makes sense. But when you fund a whole school based on enrollment numbers, that doesn't make sense, because in our district, it's a rural area. We don't have the numbers of students that they do in the bigger cities. And we wind up using those funds to heat the building, to pay the electric bill, to bus our students, which I'll give them credit for bringing a little more transportation money one time, but they've been falling behind using up their funds. We need to stop eating up the reserve funds. We need to preserve the local control of our school districts, and we need to give them the right to tax accordingly. We can't continue to go to referendum to fix our roof or our boiler. It's just not fair to our local schools.
All right, the two of you have 3 minutes.
Well, my opponent says he wants to throw out the funding formula. I guess what he doesn't realize is we are outnumbered in Madison, Milwaukee for legislators. Guess who's going to win that fight if we're not careful? The last thing I want is for Milwaukee and Madison, and that's Republicans and Democrats, to gang up on those of us in rural Wisconsin that have banded together, both Democrats and Republicans, to do what we can. You'd never have the rural transportation aids and declining enrollment monies that we saw the last time around, or new money for rural schools that we had, if you allow Madison and Milwaukee to gang up on us. It's a dangerous game, and it's a very dangerous thing to allow the school funding formula just to go by the wayside. and have Madison Milwaukee gang up on this. I'm not going to let that happen.
I think that that's a cop-out, and I think that if we're talking about getting rid of the Chapter 220, is that realistic then under Scott Suter's argument there? Is there more people in Madison, Milwaukee than there is in the whole rest of the state, and aren't the schools suffering enough in the rural areas? Then we need to put up a better fight than to support our rural schools, our local schools. And the QEO is outdated. It's held them down for over a decade, and now they're feeling the hurt of spending their reserve funds, their rainy day funds. We need to help those school districts succeed by redoing the formula, because it's not fair to the rural schools.
Okay, 3.8% for the QEO. It's a guaranteed 3.8%. I know, my mom's a retired educator.
She retired before any of this happened, and the 3.8
No, she didn't, Tim. She retired a couple years ago, so get your facts straight.
Well, whatever. It's been 8, 10 years.
And you've never met my mother, so guess we're even on that one.
Well, it's about a decade that healthcare costs have been spiraling out of control.
Well, you talk about Chapter 220, you prove my point. The reason we can't get rid of the darn Chapter 220 program is because we are outnumbered. It was a struggle to get the new monies that were fairly divided for rural schools in this budget. Yeah, we got that done. And we did have a huge fight, if you paid attention, on the Chapter 220 program. I had to battle my own Republicans in Milwaukee, and we are outnumbered. If I could get that done tomorrow, I would. I've tried it every single session.
1
and
minute.
One of these times we're going to get it.
1 minute. I was at the Colby School District a couple years ago where Scott blamed the school for their budget problem.
No, Tim, you show me where I did that. You show me where I did that.
Well,
you talk about
got
stretching.
it right here, but
you talk
I was
about,
there,
okay, where
I
is
witnessed
it?
it.
Where is it?
I don't have it right here.
Oh, I thought you said you had it right there.
Oh, yeah,
oh, you exaggerated. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that was sarcasm, Scott.
Oh, I didn't get the sarcasm, Tim.
Okay. But he stood there, and they were trying to get him to help them. They were going through a referendum and about to close the school, and he basically said, it's your fault, you spend too much money.
Okay.
That's not fair to our schools.
I was at that
that's
meeting, Tim.
ridiculous.
All right, let's wrap
we were
this
both
up.
there, Scott.
I was at that meeting, Tim, and I don't know what planet you're living on, but what I did when I was viciously attacked by the school board president was say, look, here are the facts from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau. You're getting 2/3 funding, in fact, more at that time from the state. How much more do you want? Look, I didn't want that school to close. That wasn't my decision. But I said, look, how much more do you need? We're giving you more money. You're getting more than 2/3. I'm trying my best here. There's a lot of schools that aren't getting that. That's what I said, Tim. I didn't say close the school. I didn't say anything other than that. So check the record, Tim, and get the facts straight.
Okay, the time is up. We're moving on to Donna Seidel and Jessica Fall in the 85th District. And Donna, you've got 90 seconds on property taxes and school funding.
I'm not quite sure how to jump in and follow up on this. First, what I would like to say is the portrayal of the support that our public schools got in the state budget and how just, fair, and good we were to them is great. But what my colleague isn't doing, my Republican colleague isn't talking about the proposal that the Republican in the Assembly initially had that would have been devastating for the public schools in the state of Wisconsin, and luckily that didn't pass. I'd like to talk about the school funding formula that we have all discussed. It is extremely complicated. In fact, when I first went to Madison, people said, if 3 people in Madison are telling you they understand the school funding formula, one's mistaken and the other 2 are lying. It is incredibly complicated. We have convened a number of conferences, brought together representatives from across the state to say either their school districts are on the verge of bankruptcy because they're in rural areas, or if not, even the ones in large urban areas know that they will be in a world of hurt in years to come if we don't change it. The Assembly Democrats had a proposal to, the bill would have called for a bill that would revise the school funding formula to be in place by 2009. The Republicans scoffed at that, said that's silly, that's a plan to have a plan.
10 seconds.
We wanted to use the best and brightest minds in Wisconsin and the country to come up with a better way that doesn't pit taxpayers against our kids in our schools, and the Republicans laughed at it and would have nothing to do with it.
Jess Kufal, you have 90 seconds.
Wow. Hey, this question you have, I can really break that down into 2 different particular areas. One, basically the property tax burden. It's always been my belief to get that off the shoulder of the property owners. I think that's kind of an unfair, whether it be business property owners or personal property owners. It's always been my preference to shift some of that tax burden over to a small sales tax. And a lot of people don't realize what kind of money that sales tax generates. Just on our own local information, and assuming that half the counties in our state are economically prosperous, a 0.5% could generate almost $600 million a year. If that money could be transferred over for its sole purpose of property tax relief, it'd be a big burden off of a lot of our shoulders. This sales tax would affect everybody, the people that travel through Wisconsin, people that fly in, their vacationers that come here and spend money in our resorts and restaurants and whatever it may be, or buy their gas. A lot of people are being taxed out of their homes because they have no kids. They feel it's not fair that they have to pay these huge property tax, which is heavily loaded towards school taxes. The second thing, the school costs. Granted, I was going to go back to the healthcare costs.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. I better talk fast. Anyway, I think we're making long-term commitments on short-term demographic trends in building schools. I think we should look a little closer at the need for some of these newer buildings.
All right, you both have 3 minutes. Just keep going.
Oh, okay, great. I'll take it over from the top. Back to the school buildings. I'm a real advocate. I'm in the building business. Why would I not want to do any building? But some of these schools that I see, they rival Las Vegas casinos. I don't know that we need to spend $20 million on a high school, only to find out 5 years later we don't have enough students to put in it. Once we build it, we're committed to its upkeep and its expenses to maintain the facility and the people and the staff to run it for the life of the building. There are several examples in my area. The town of Berlin, which was a elementary school, it's closed. They sold it for almost nothing. They probably sold it for 5 cents on the dollar for what it cost in the building because of declining enrollments in that particular area. So they shifted them over to a different neighborhood.
2 minutes.
Okay, I guess I can wrap this up. Go ahead.
We're in the rebuttal session, Donna. If you want to
Well,
barge in.
I think that certainly from my perspective, the commitment when we deal with a very, very complicated, difficult, brutal budget will be to maintain school funding at a 2/3 level, maintain shared revenue, and take care of our transportation needs as 3 of our top priorities. And doing that's going to be really tough because the schools have been tightening their belts, and to maintain their funding now with the declining enrollment issue in many of our rural areas, with the revenue caps that are very difficult for schools to deal with, particularly with skyrocketing energy costs, costs of health care for the staff and the faculty, and the cost of maintaining safety in school, which is a new issue that we weren't dealing with 10 years ago. So to maintain the status quo is even going to be much more difficult. And I think that as difficult as it is, we have to look at the school funding formula because when it was created in the early 90s, it may have worked then. It doesn't work today for every place in Wisconsin. We have a responsibility to assure our kids equal quality education throughout the state. Should not be and cannot be dependent on having the good fortune of living in a wealthy area. So we've got to put our heads together, roll up our sleeves, and do tough work of coming up with a good plan. And that's why when the Assembly Democrats said, why don't we get together and why don't we commit to studying this hard enough and working hard enough to have something to roll out a year from now.
20 seconds.
That ought to have been a bipartisan decision that should have been easy for all of us to make.
Okay, back to me again.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Robert Menser of the Daily Herald with a question on the voter fraud lawsuit that's been filed against the state. And after you ask the question, I am going to move things speed things up here a little bit, at least on this particular topic. I wanted to give us a lot of time on the economic questions that are before the state. So, Robert?
Right. Well, Attorney General J.B. Van Hollen has filed a lawsuit to force the state's town and municipal clerks to verify the identities of every voter who's registered since January 1st, 2006. This has set off a partisan outcry with either side accusing the other of tampering with free and fair elections. So I'd like to know whether you support Attorney General Van Hollen's lawsuit. For those opposed, a simple question: isn't one person, one vote one of the bedrock principles of democracy? And what's so onerous really about registration checks or voter ID requirements? For those who support the lawsuit, a national study by New York University last year found that it is, quote, more likely that an individual will be struck by lightning than that he will impersonate another voter at the polls. Since we know that lawsuits like Van Hollen's are going to tend to depress voter turnout, isn't this a case where the cure may be worse than the disease?
We're going to Scott Suter and Tim Swigum, and what we're going to do for this is give you each a minute and then 90-second rebuttals, and we'll keep that time frame for this particular question. Scott?
Okay. What the Attorney General is doing is he's simply enforcing law. He is enforcing federal law. It's called the Help America Voter Act. That's federal law. And what he's simply doing is saying, look, we got to follow federal law. And I think that's important. And look, I'm a big proponent of photo ID in this state. Not sure where my opponent is on that, but I see no reason why you shouldn't have to prove who you are and prove that you are who you are and you live where you live. There's nothing wrong with that. I think what the Attorney General is doing is the right thing. And I don't think it'll cause the problems that some naysayers out there are saying it'll cause. If that's the case, blame Congress. He's simply enforcing the law.
Tim?
Well, I'm not opposed to the act itself. I'm just opposed to the timing of the lawsuit with a month and a half before election. I think that it's too tedious of a task for our local clerks to take on. If they were to have taken this on a year and a half ago when it was supposed to become a law and it was enforced then I agree that they would have had time. But the lawsuit, I think, is frivolous because he's supposed to represent the state and he's suing the state, and I don't think that that's quite right.
A minute for the both of you.
Well, the reason he's suing the state is because the Government Accountability Board, formerly the Elections Board, didn't get the job done. They were supposed to do this. They had problems with software. They had all kinds of problems, all kinds of excuses. They were supposed to follow this law. And that he's simply saying, look, because this election is so very important for everyone, Democrats, Republicans, Greens, everyone, we have to make sure that the integrity of the ballot box is a priority. That's what he's doing. And you can't blame it on the Attorney General. He's forced to do this. It's his job to enforce the law. If he didn't, he wouldn't be doing his job.
I agree it's his job to enforce the law. I just think that this lawsuit is frivolous, and for a party that's so up on conserving money, this is going to waste a lot of money from the state.
Well, you don't enforce, without enforcing the law, you risk the integrity of the ballot box. That's incredibly important. Frankly,
why did he wait till August?
Because the Government Accountability Board didn't get the job done. He was waiting for them to do it. They didn't get the job done. So cast your blame on the Government Accountability Board. Don't pass it on the Attorney General.
Does it affect the case that he is McCain's representative? It's not a partisan thing at all.
I think, does it affect the case that you're the mayor of Owen and you support Obama? Come on, that's ridiculous.
How do you know that?
I saw you at the Obama stand at Thorpe Pumpkin Fest, Tim,
all right,
handing out signs.
Let's move on to the 85th District. Donna Seidel, you've got a minute to weigh in on this.
Well, it certainly is no surprise that many people are questioning the issue and how our Republican Attorney General took it on. Again, he is the campaign chair for McCain. Wisconsin, as most people here realize, is a swing state. And the press today just released audio of Van Hollen in backroom discussions with the chair of the Republican Party of Wisconsin talking about this very lawsuit that he was willing to initiate and put the power behind his department to promote in Wisconsin. It certainly helps people cast an eye on that and say, is this the right thing to do, and is this truly where the tax resources of Wisconsin should go when they're so limited? The other thing is, this has to do with blending computers computer systems. And because of the difficulty and poor choices made in the original voter computer system, and now they have to match a completely different computer system from DOT. The matches that are not being made are in hyphenated names. If you used a middle initial for DOT and not for voter registration, you're going to be thrown out. So I agree with the comment made about lightning being struck, and also
Let's move on to Jessica.
Can I just give you 5 seconds?
You'll have time.
Okay.
Jessica Fall.
Okay.
You'll get your chance.
Okay. I'll take it.
I personally don't have a problem with anybody showing ID. I don't understand that could be a big of an issue. It's more, I'm guessing it's more of a national issue than it is here locally. You know, I did hear about, you know, we hear in election years that people who've in the graveyard have been shown up to be listed as voters. Also, you know, voting is a right of an American. You know, this is an opportunity. If you're an alien or a felon, you should not be allowed to vote in the first place. So I don't know that it, you know, what kind of money this is going to cost to bring into a lawsuit. I can't believe it should be a lawsuit anyway. If it is federal law, it should just be enforced, and there shouldn't be any court action involved.
All right, you've each got another minute.
Okay. Well, to follow up on what Jess said, I agree that voting is the greatest right that each and every one of us have. And I think that Wisconsin ought to be very proud that we have such a great record of voter turnout, and we encourage it and recognize the ability of everybody to cast their vote. Stephen Biskupik was the Republican investigator who a couple of years ago was in charge of the statewide investigation when we were hearing from the Republicans about all this rampant fraud through election fraud throughout the state. And this Republican attorney reported back that he simply could find no rampant electoral fraud in Wisconsin. It doesn't exist. This attempt by Von Hollen is simply to disenfranchise up to 20,000 voters in the state of Wisconsin, where a very critical, crucial, close vote will be made on November 4th.
Jess, you've got 10 seconds. Do you have anything to add?
I have nothing
Let's
more to
move on
say.
to Jerry Petrusky. Jerry, you've got 60 seconds to weigh in on this.
Well, the Attorney General is the top law enforcement officer in the state, and he takes an oath to enforce the law. This is a federal law. I think they call it HAVA, or Help Americans Vote Act. It's something that is in place, and it should be enforced. If the law says that they're supposed to cross-check new people that are registering to vote back to sometime in 2006, that's what they should be doing. That's what the law says. However, I get from what I read about it is that they only want to go back as far as August of 2008. Well, if the law is that it should be enforced from 2006, there should be checks made, then they should be making them.
Nate, you've got a minute.
Sure. I guess I don't have a lot to add beyond what everyone else has said here. It's obviously a case that's in front of the courts right now, and I think before, I'm quite sure the legislature isn't in session right now anyway, so I'm quite sure that before any action would be taken by the legislature, it would have to be resolved to a certain extent in the courts. I think just the only general note I would add about voting is that I think, you know, whatever reforms folks talk about, we just need to make sure that people who are citizens and have the right to vote don't lose that right to vote.
Anyone want to add anything to that?
I think it really is about integrity from the whole voting process. I haven't looked at this case, I haven't read it, but I can remember seeing articles in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that said that there were 4,600 people more that voted than they had registered voters. Well, that leads to make you wonder on how much integrity there is in the voting system. And I think that's why that bill was put in place in Washington.
It was stated here that, you know, if the Attorney General is successful, that your vote will be thrown out. That's not true. What will happen is a provisional ballot will be cast. It'll be set aside, so its further review will be done. I think that's fair. And you say there's no voter fraud in the state? Well, why were convicted felons, this is from the Journal-Sentinel only 2 weeks ago, convicted felons in Milwaukee registering voters? That scares the dickens out of me. That shouldn't happen. What we should have is integrity. Make sure you are who you say you are, and you live where you say you live. That's all we're asking. So if there aren't any problems, what are you scared of?
Well, once again, I want to clarify that the biggest difficulty that is being uncovered and making some voters ineligible potentially is the match between two large statewide databases. Now, obviously, that it's easy to see how two separate computer systems would have difficulty talking to one another. If you register in one way for your driver's license as James T. O'Connor and vote as Jim T. O'Connor, guess what? You're going to be eliminated, and you're going to be the problem voter and be given this opportunity to cast a provisional ballot and whatever else. The point is that the problem is not with our friends, our neighbors, trying to exercise their right to vote. The problem is getting the computer system straightened out. And a lot of people have struggled for many years to say the state made some poor decisions along the way when they were spending the money on the database computer system for the voter list. And now it's coming to fruition.
I think we need to move on. This is of great statewide importance, but not such great importance for our local races. So let's move on to the next question. We have Katie Rosenberg with a question on the proposed smoking ban in the state of Wisconsin.
Proponents of a statewide smoking ban cite public health hazards of allowing smoking in public places. The U.S. Surgeon General, the American Cancer Society, the American Lung Association, and the American Heart Association each report that exposure to secondhand smoke increases the risk of heart disease, lung cancer, and respiratory disease, even in non-smokers. However, opponents note that smoking bans infringe on business owner rights. Do you support a comprehensive smoking ban? Can you balance concern for public health and the rights of business owners? And would you make an exception for taverns?
And I think we're going to speed things up a little bit on this one. We'll give you each 90 seconds, followed by 2 minutes, and we're starting with the 85th district this time. Donna Seidel, you've got 90 minutes on the smoking ban.
Yes.
90 seconds
90
on the
minutes. I'll take 90 minutes. Yes, I've made it clear from the first days in the Assembly that I strongly supported a statewide smoking ban for a number of reasons. A, health-related reasons. We talk about the cost of health care and figuring out a way to reduce the escalating costs. Costs in Wisconsin, Medicaid costs in Wisconsin related to for smoke-related illness is $500 million a year. If we're serious about doing something on health care, this is the way to do it. We're not leading the charge anymore. Other states, our neighbors have done this statewide. European countries are doing it countrywide. People understand the science-based evidence behind doing this. I believe the question is not if, it's when. I think we ought to do it sooner rather than later. People want even playing fields. And even the Republican speaker from our last session, Mike Hipsch, said he thought that this would pass next session, and I certainly hope so as well.
Jessica Fall?
Okay, I'm going to have to go on the other side of the fence to that. For the record, I'm a non-smoker, but it's really you're talking about the rights of a private property owner. It should be the sole discretion of the person who owns that restaurant or a tavern. They're smart enough to get into business. They should know if their customers want it to be a smoke-free establishment, they should make it if it's better for their business, but it should be their decision. And we're just taking more rights away from the individual. There's what's next on the list. We took peanut oil out of theaters. Now they're talking, they want to take saturated fat out of everything you eat. You just really got to draw the line somewhere. I'm sure that sooner or later this is going to pass, but I, for one, disagree with the whole concept.
And our rebuttal session?
Well, I'll just reiterate that the evidence, the science, fact-based evidence shows us clearly that it's in the best interest of the health and well-being of everybody to eliminate smoking, and the cost to the taxpayer is significantly reduced. Mayor Bloomberg from New York was in Germany, and I caught this on TV yesterday. They were giving him a European National Award for banning smoking in New York, and nations in Europe were following suit and applauding him for taking the lead and encouraging them to do that. I wish Wisconsin could easily and quickly get in step.
Let's move on to Jerry Petrusky. Jerry, you've got 90 seconds on the smoking ban.
I think the important thing to realize is that most things that get done in Madison or wherever get done because people work together and find common ground. In this particular case, I know that this has been worked on to come up with a compromise between people that are involved, regardless if they're in the tavern business, the restaurant business. Some of them are dealing with the concern that they would like to have a level playing field, where they have one set of laws in one community, another one in another community. Actually, Senator Decker worked a lot on this compromise, and he got a lot of the groups on board with the local government, the Towns Association, some of the municipalities. So I think what you're going to see happen is a compromise that everybody decides they can live with.
Nate, you've got 90 seconds.
Yeah, I guess I'll just actually echo some of what Representative Petruski said. I think, you know, given the move by a lot of municipalities to do bans on their own, I do think that probably, I know that he didn't say this, but I think that probably what makes sense in the long run is a statewide solution on this, so that we don't have different people in different places under different sets of rules. I live in the village of Weston, which recently considered a municipal ban, and they essentially, I think I can say verbatim almost, that they oppose doing a municipal ban, but encourage the state to adopt a level playing field or uniform rules for the whole state. So I'm happy to listen. I know that there were folks on both sides of this issue that had very strong feelings, and I'm happy to listen to folks on both sides to try to negotiate and move the ball forward on this.
Either of you have anything to add? Let's move on to Scott. You've got 90 seconds on the smoking ban.
Okay, to answer the question, yes, I support an exemption for taverns, absolutely. If there is no compromise in this issue, and some of the smoking cessation groups, like Tobacco Free Wisconsin, are absolutely unwilling to compromise, and the Tavern League and the Restaurant Association are willing to compromise and came up with some good compromises. Without a compromise, no, I'm not going to support it. Small businesses have a right to decide how to run their businesses, particularly in rural areas that depend so much on these. It's their livelihood. It's their economic risk, and it's their business. And for Madison to tell Clark and Marathon County small business owners how to run their businesses, I think is absurd. The fact is we spent, in over the past 4 years, $40 million. The state invested $40 million in smoking cessation programs across the board, from the UW to the Tobacco Quit line. So we have made those investments. I don't like smoking. I don't smoke. But and maybe I'm not going to get an award from Germany, but I'm sure as heck going to fight for those small businesses and their livelihoods in my district and others. Madison doesn't have all the right decisions, and if there's no compromise, I'm not voting for it.
Tim Swigum, you've got 90 seconds.
Well, I spent 13 years owning restaurants. At first I was in a cafe, and there's just as much smoking going on in the cafes because cigarette goes good with coffee just as it does with the beer. So I agree that it should be a level playing field, and wrote letters back then that I didn't want to see the taverns have an upper hand on my cafe because all my lunch business would go to the taverns. So I would agree that the level playing field, there would be no exemption for the taverns, but I also realize that 80% of the public wants these, and I don't think any of them have failed in the state that have the cities that have gone to referendum. So why don't the state put it up to a referendum and watch the people vote it in because they want it?
So I guess I'll ask my opponent the question, do you support a comprehensive smoking ban without exemptions for taverns, yes or no?
I just said that I would support the level playing field.
I know, but I would ask you to answer the question, yes or no. I don't know what level playing field means in your world.
If the restaurants are going to go non-smoking, the taverns should too.
So you do not support an exemption for taverns?
Knowing that 80% of the people want this, that I agree that I would probably support it.
Support the comprehensive smoking ban?
Support the ban.
Okay, great.
All right, let's move on to Robert Mentzer with a rather complex question on jail, substance abuse, drug abuse, and the cost of all of those linked together. Robert?
Thank you. Our county jails and prisons are overcrowded, and our nation continues to have one of the highest per capita incarceration rates in the world. Many of those in prison in Wisconsin have drug and alcohol abuse problems that have been factors in the crimes they've committed. Yet some advocates continue to call for tougher measures, including making first offense drunk driving in this state a crime. Are you in favor of that? And where do you stand on the bigger questions of prison overcrowding, the abuse of drugs and alcohol, and Wisconsin's culture of alcohol consumption?
We're going to start with Jerry Petrusky and Nate Mishka. And Jerry, you've got 90 seconds. Let's try to keep the rebuttals to 2 minutes because the evening is running long.
Okay, I believe that the Marathon County, what they're looking at, building a new jail for $40 million. That cost is huge. You know, I think we need to find ways that alternatives to incarceration, whether it be monitoring, some type of supervisory. The bottom line in any of that is that we have to make sure that the citizens of the state are protected. These can only be done with nonviolent criminals. And I think we have to separate those two out, because I'm not going to vote for anything that puts people in jeopardy or people in danger with criminals. I think we need to get to a point where we can allow the judges to mandate treatment in some of these cases, but then we also have to find a way to pay for it. I'm also in favor of developing laws where we can save money within the jail. And I'll give you an example. We could go ahead and hook up with video technology right now. Every week we have deputies running across our state to pick up prisoners from, whether it be down in Green Bay or over in Waupun or whatever. Haul the people back for motions hearings. They're here for a day, then they have 2 deputies haul them all the way back. If we could do that through video technology, I think we could save a lot of money. And I'm in favor of looking at ways to accomplish that and to try to find ways that we can cut costs at our jails. One of the articles that I've read lately is that the faith-based initiatives have shown great promise with turning people and helping them turn their lives around in prison. But we need to take a wide look at this and see what we can come up with.
Nate, you've got 90 seconds, and then we'll have a 2-minute rebuttal with the two of you.
Sure. Well, I agree that we need to pursue alternatives. It's certainly, I think, if you were to scope out the costs, I think we've increased jail funding in the last 20 years by about 250%, and I think anything that we can do to create alternatives would be a good thing. And by alternatives, I include making sure that prisoners are mandated to have treatment. One of the things I think that sometimes people think treatment is perhaps a soft on crime issue, but I'd rather have someone that's in a jail cell be forced to get treatment for alcohol and drug abuse problems rather than watching cable TV during the day. So I think anything that we can do to that, I think the statistics show that for every dollar spent on alternatives, we save quite a few more. So I would only add that, again, going back to the state budget deficit makes it difficult to consider new and innovative problems like this, or new and innovative solutions like this, and I would want to work toward getting that under control.
You've got 2 minutes between the two of you, and I would like both of you to answer the one part of the question: are you in favor of making first offense drunk driving in this state a crime?
At what level of drunk driving? Right now we're under 0.08.
Well, answer however you want, but that is a legal limit right now.
Right. And that would be a felony?
The proponents who want to see it as a felony are saying, yes, make it a felony.
No, I don't think that's a good idea. There's a lot of people that have been picked up once for drunk driving in their life and never again. And I think you hang that designation as a felon around them, I don't think that's a good idea. And very often there's a lot of people that just get picked up for being 0.08. I think a lot of the focus should be on educating these people. We do a lot of that here in the local jail with getting them into a GED, getting them a diploma, finding ways, teaching them a trade, and I think we need to focus on that.
Nate, first offense drunk driving, a felony?
Yeah, I would also agree on that one, that I would not be generally supportive of that idea. I think if someone is picked up for a first time, we ought to try to find ways to get them treatment to make sure that it wouldn't happen again. But I think in many cases it is an isolated incident. So I guess I'm not sure if I want to add anything more to that.
Right, let's move to Scott Suter and Tim Swigum.
Well, first of all, I do think, and I have supported alternatives to incarceration. The last state budget, I served in my first time in joint finance, and I worked with Mark Buchan, and we worked on some alternatives to incarceration trial projects that were included in the budget. And I think I gave our chairman, Senator Decker, a heart attack because we went into a room, came back, and actually had a compromise. And someone said that's, you know, the last such compromise that occurred like that of two people from such different mindsets was between Gorbachev and Reagan at Reykjavik. I would be Reagan, of course. But we have worked in the last two budgets on alternatives to incarceration. Senator Ressler on one hand, Mark Buchan on the other. We've included those in our budgets, and I think we need trial projects like that. I have supported them to some degree, but as long as you deal with non-violent felons, under no circumstances are we going to let individuals who have raped a child or have been sexual predators or have committed violent felonies out and participate in these programs. So yeah, I support programs, but they had better include nonviolent felons, and I think we should also explore GPS for those nonviolent felons. If you look at Kansas and Texas, they're doing a wonderful job of utilizing that technology to save costs and still track these people and still have community safety.
Tim, you've got 90 seconds.
Well, I tend to agree with the panel here that prison overcrowding is a problem, and that if we can treat nonviolent offenders and get them rehab, that we could save the state a lot of money by teaching them, by helping them out and help them help themselves, to empower them to lead a better life. We need to educate them, and if it's a GED or if it's a field that they want to go into, we could teach them a trade. I think that once they get out, they need to find work, and it's harder and harder, and we can't keep making laws that restrict them being able to find work, but we need to encourage employers to hire them and give them a chance so that they don't wind up back on the street or back in the prison. I believe that this is the answer to the overcrowding. We're similar to Minnesota in population. We have twice as many, I don't know what the number is, but we have a lot more people in our prisons than they do, so maybe we need to go over there and study what they're doing.
All right, you've both got 2 more minutes, and again, if you could answer the question, first offense, drunk driving, a crime?
First offense, drunk driving, a crime. At this point, how the bill is written, no. You know, look, I've been accused of being one of the toughest on crime guys in the state capitol, but you also have to have some reasonable measures here, so I won't support that. But I do think if you look at the prison population, and aside from the nonviolent felons, if you look at the prison population, there's a reason they go to prison. And you can criticize the law, but there's a reason they go to prison. It's because they've done something bad. And I'm not about to give them more opportunities than they have. I think we should treat them fairly, and we do give them education opportunities galore. In fact, if you look at it, we could save $3 million by not paying them to take educational classes and paying them to take alcohol and drug treatment. That should be mandated. We spend $3 million a year paying prisoners to go to free classes. That's nuts. We should take that money, use it for other things, alternative incarceration, but we shouldn't be paying prisoners, one, not to work, and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that. We also pay them to go to class. Find me a student at this university or any other gets paid to go to class, but yet we pay our prisoners. That's nuts.
Tim Swigum, first offense, drunk driving, a crime?
I agree that it should not be a felony crime. I mean, obviously it's a crime, but not a felony. People make mistakes. They shouldn't be held over their head for the rest of their life, but we do need to make sure they get the rehab and the treatment that they need to prevent that from happening again. And repeat offenders is another story. As far as I guess that's all. I'll leave it at that.
All right, moving to the 85th District, Donna Seidel, you've got 90 seconds.
Well, I think this is a very, very difficult issue. There is a reason that Wisconsin will have a very tough time the next legislative session defending why we're the only state in the country that doesn't criminalize first offense drunk driving. And we'll have to look at options about if it is in fact criminalized, what those penalties are, and what options that the judges have in sentencing, and what are the ramifications to our local jails and justice system and the workload that will put on them. But I want to say that it will be incumbent on us as legislators to really do the hard stuff and look very carefully at this issue. Our newspaper and papers around the state really focus the spotlight on the terrible record Wisconsin has in terms of alcohol-related crimes, alcohol abuses, and the culture of drinking. And we've got to make a change. So this will be a very complicated, tough decision, and I think that I'm opposed to having this be a felony, but I think it's going to be a hard argument to say that Wisconsin should remain the only state not criminalizing first offense.
Jessica Fall, you've got 90 seconds.
Boy, I could take 5 minutes on this one. I absolutely oppose felony of first-time drunken driving, or OWI. First of all, it's going back 25 years. That OWI rate used to be 0.15, and it's literally has literally halved itself in 25 years. So the likelihood of getting arrested for this is substantially higher. And I brought along a magazine, pretty reputable magazine, Forbes, and there's an interesting story in there from a Harvard professor that looked at this issue in other countries. And this may be a very unpopular thing to say, but they have found absolutely no decreases in traffic fatality deaths and such by reducing the blood alcohol content or reducing the age of the drinking age from 21 down to 18. Their studies attribute that it is more of an increase in technology in the healthcare and safer automobile technology. So I won't get too deep into that, but as Jerry also pointed out earlier, the technology of video technology, we already have this technology available at the North Central Technical College, and it works quite well, and it can be easily adaptable to any sheriff's department. A lot of these nonviolent criminals, there's no reason to lock them up or spend tens of millions of dollars creating a facility for them.
The two of you have 2 minutes, and Donna, I imagine you've got something to add to that.
Just quickly, as clerk of court for 16 years before I went in the legislature, I can assure Jerry and Jess that Marathon County does have that technology. They've had it for years. How and why it's used is a different issue, but it's there and able to be used. I think the issue of criminal justice is one for us to focus on, because I have long said that that's the issue in the state budget that consumes so much of our dollars that I think a lot better decisions could be made about the money we spend. I've been in law enforcement a great part of my career. I think community safety is an absolute top priority. But as Tim pointed out, Minnesota, our neighboring state, also values community protection and safety and incarcerates far fewer people. Our incarcerated people are not getting deals galore in the prison system. We're not doing a very good job with them. We're housing them. We're spending $30,000 a year to house them, and then we throw them out. There is no support in terms of reentry to the community because there's no way to pay for that. And without support in finding a place to live and finding a job and getting connected to a support system, the chance of them going back to another term at more years at $30,000 a year continues to escalate. We have been tough on crime for a long time. It's time for us to be smart on crime.
We've still got 45 seconds. If
Well said. I agree with what she just said.
All right, you've been very patient and very attentive. Thank you. That concludes tonight's Election Year Issues Forum for the Assembly candidates of Central Wisconsin. Incumbent Republican Scott Suter and Democrat Tim Swigum of the 69th District, incumbent Democrat Donna Seidel and Republican Jessica Fall of the 85th District, and incumbent Republican Jerry Petrusky and Democrat Nate Mishka of the 86th District. A round of applause for all 6 of our candidates, please. I'm Glenn Moberg of Wisconsin Public Radio. Our questioners tonight, Katie Rosenberg of WAOW TV9 and Robert Menser of the Wausau Daily Herald. Joining our three news organizations in sponsoring this event, the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service. Thanks again to UW Marathon County and Dean Sandra Smith for making this theater available for the evening and for providing the technical support that made this forum possible. Now again, this was being webcast, streamed live on WausauDailyHerald.com. There will be highlights on Newsline 9 tonight, and if you want to hear highlights on the radio, it's this Thursday at 5 p.m. on Wisconsin Public Radio's Route 51 Regional Talk Show. That's 91.9 FM Wausau, 9:30 a.m. Auburndale Stevens Point, 90.3 FM Park Falls, and 90.9 FM Wausau High Definition Channel 2. Remember to vote November 4th. Please give yourselves a round of applause. Good night, everybody.